Hi, I'm Franklin, and this is Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job. How I Graduated from Law School with a Job is a series of interviews with practicing attorneys and legal professionals to find out more about their career journey. The purpose is for you to hear about how other legal professionals became employed and started their career following law school, or in some cases, relaunched their careers at a later stage in their professional life. It's not just young lawyers that we'll be talking with, but attorneys across all levels of experience and practice areas. The purpose isn't to try and prove the legal job market is perfect, because it's not, or convince you it's easy to get a job and there are tons of jobs out there, because there simply aren't. However, I do hope you gain some insights, ideas, tips, or other pieces of advice that can help you and your law school strategy. Because I do believe that if you work hard, follow the advice we share, you'll be closer than ever to graduating from law school with a job. On this episode, we have attorney Denise Howell from California. Hi, Denise.
Hey, Franklin, great to see you.
Yes, thanks for joining us. So I'll just kick it off with the very first question. Why did you go to law school, and what did you study before law school?
I went to UCLA undergrad, and I was an English major at UCLA. And I guess I went to law school because I didn't have anything concrete that I wanted to do with my English major getting out of college. I have a lot of lawyers in my family, so it was always something that was in the back of my mind as a possible career path. And I applied to law schools just to sort of see how that process went. When it went pretty well, I decided to actually go because people kept giving me the advice that, well, it can never really hurt to get a law degree. If you don't know what else you want to do, you may as well just get the law degree and it will give you other opportunities. So I went with that, and I wound up going to UC Berkeley for law school. And I think that answers everything you asked, right? What did I study before? Yeah.
Yes, that did.
Okay.
Did you have any internships throughout your law school career?
I did clerkships with law firms during my law school career. My first summer, I didn't work, and that was kind of controversial. I remember various other 1Ls going, oh my gosh, you're going to spend a summer where you're not working? You're not going to have anything on your resume? No, and I've never regretted not working that first summer. Instead, that was the time and the one time in my life where I got to go backpack through Europe, Eurail pass around, really experience a lot of different cultures, meet a lot of new people, take in a lot of history and get a lot of perspective. And that was just invaluable. I mean, not just for getting a job, but in life. So I've never regretted doing that for a moment. But then the next couple of summers, I did conventional firm clerkships. So my first year summer, I worked for Morrison and Forster and Manat Phelps. And then, I'm sorry, that would be the summer after my second year. And then after that, I didn't have any further clerkships, but I interviewed with another law firm at that time because I wasn't certain that either of the firms where I had clerked were where I wanted to wind up. So I interviewed as a third year as well, and wound up finding a firm that I felt like I really clicked with through that process. And that's where I went to work.
Great. So I guess you kind of answered the most important question I was going to ask is, did you graduate from law school with a job? And it kind of sounds like you did. So it was that clerkship that led to that?
Yes, it was. Well, I had the experience from my clerkships certainly helped. And it also helped me narrow down, get some actual working as a lawyer within a law firm kind of experience, even though you're not really a lawyer in those clerkships. And the kinds of work that you can be assigned can be sort of fluffy, for lack of a better word. At the entertainment law firm that I worked for that summer, they had us playing video games in the basement in connection with a copyright infringement lawsuit they were handling to see if the look and feel of one game was similar enough to the other game and write down notes and stuff. It was pretty thinly veiled strategy to make people say, this is the coolest firm ever. but that is not the place where I wound up going to work. But those experiences definitely helped me identify, okay, I like this about this firm. I don't like this about this other firm. And how can I begin to hone in on something where I feel like I'll be a good fit?
So let's fast forward a little bit. Obviously, you're not still with that firm. So I know that you went on to other firms after that. So what was that process like?
So I've worked in a number of different law firms over the years. And what happened to me early on in my career was a really good lesson in that as much as you try and control and take steps in your own life that are going to dictate the path of your career, not that much of what your career path is winds up being under your control, especially if, when you're coming out of school, you are someone's employee. And whatever happens to that organization happens to you. So the place I originally went to work for out of law school was sort of, for lack of a better word, and since I do a lot of work in the technology arena, I'll call it a startup firm, because it was a small splinter from what used to be massive firm, Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. So a bunch of lawyers decided they didn't like the big firm experience. I had decided, by the way, and this was part of the reason that I went there, I didn't much care for the big firm experience either. And going with these folks who wanted to sort of reinvent the way law was practiced was very exciting for me. They had a very great approach toward how they were going to relate to clients, how they were going to be flexible about billing, how they were going to basically run their whole firm. And it was very fun for about 9 months working there, very busy. I was in their litigation department, and our workload was just through the roof. But we wound up being in the middle of an economic downturn at that time, where, as I said, the litigation was going crazy, and all the rest of the portions of the firm, there had been a very thriving corporate and M&A practice there that kind of dried up in that 9-month period. So the firm was struggling financially, and the litigators decided to split off yet again and form their own even smaller firm. So that's what we did. I went from sort of medium-sized firm to really small-sized firm for what wound up being the first part of my career, my first 7 years in practice, and became a partner there. And it was a boutique litigation firm. And the next sort of shift that I had was whether, 7 years of doing business litigation gave me some experience of, what that involved and whether that was what I wanted to continue doing. And for me personally, it was a good time to make another shift. So that's what I did then.
Yeah. So what was that decision that you made to do the shift? What did that look like? And did you go a different route, or was it more of just the firm was changing again? Kind of what led to that career change?
It was a little bit of both. The firm was having some sort of internal growing pains and internecine struggles that were not that pleasant to be involved in. But at bottom, it was a realization that what I was doing was not going to carry me through in a personal fulfillment kind of way. So I wanted to try something else. And what I wound up trying was appellate work at a firm that had a very known and respected appellate department and a very close family tie to myself. As I said, I had a lot of family members who had practiced law, and I had sort of grown up knocking around my dad's law firm, which was based in Oakland, and it doesn't exist in this iteration anymore, but it was a well-known California law firm called Crosby, Heafy, Roach and May. And my dad had been a partner there the whole time I was growing up. I knew bunches of the partners there, thought of them, basically in kind of an aunt and uncle sort of relationship. And it happened to have this great appellate department, and I really wanted to try my hand at appellate work. So the decision I made then, it had some pros and cons, and it was not an easy decision to make. And that was to start doing two things that I told myself, and I knew at the time going into it, were going to be difficult to contend with. One was commuting a long way every day from Orange County, California to downtown LA, California. So that was a big undertaking in itself. And then secondly was going to work for a much larger law firm, even though Crosby Heafy was still just a California firm at the time. What happened during my 7-year tenure there is it also became part of what is now Reed Smith. So it was a host of factors going on there that were things that I knew going in were not great fits for me. The commute, whatever your listeners and viewers can do to avoid a commute is something they should think seriously about doing. And again, I just knew that the big firm thing was going to be difficult for me to contend with, and it wound up being just that.
So what you mentioned, that was your switch to appellate work, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what did you do? What was it like in terms of whether it might have been fear or just the knowing that you had to learn a lot in terms of changing the type of practice you were doing? What did you do to prepare for that? Was the firm helpful at all, or was that a consideration that you weighed in as you said, you have pros and cons?
Yeah, no, the firm, and I think, you need to take this kind of thing into account if you are going to make a shift into a slightly different practice area. Fortunately, the shift from business litigation at the trial court level to business litigation at the appellate court level, while they are two distinct kinds of practices, they have a very close relationship to each other. There's a lot of writing. The research and arguments are the same. It's basically taking the writing aspect of doing litigation and putting that front and center, and also developing your argument skills in a different way. You're not arguing to a jury, you're arguing to a very cerebral, knowledgeable, challenging panel of judges who have read everything that you've cited to them and know the case is probably better than you do. So in order to begin to move into that kind of practice, you do need to learn from people who've been doing it and are very good at it. And that you need to focus on the fact that you're not just going to be thrown into that. And I wasn't. I got a lot of good training and opportunity to grow as a lawyer in that new environment.
Definitely. So you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to dig deeper into the fact that a lot of law students these days face a challenging job market. And you mentioned that the job market that you faced was not the best. And I'm beginning to learn that maybe it comes in waves, that there's never really a prime time to graduate and find a job. But can you discuss a little bit about what you did to set yourself apart, even in law school, or these different career moves that you made to set yourself apart from other applicants, or to reach out to attorneys to try to find the open position you were looking to make a move to?
Well, one thing I did was to follow where the jobs were geographically. I had gone to school in Northern California, and the downturn that we had economically in California at that time hit Northern California before it hit Southern California. So although it wound up catching up to me down there and wound up affecting my career, I did manage to have, I think, more opportunities available to me after law school, because I was looking in that geographic area where there were more jobs and more demand for people coming out of law school. So as far as the place that I decided to settle, that was certainly helpful, and set me apart from the real competitive atmosphere for jobs in Northern California at that particular time. This was right before, this was in like 1990. So not right before the tech boom, but as the tech boom was starting to take shape up there. If you can remember that the first real usable internet browser came about in 1995, that'll help you put some context to the timing of all this. And otherwise, to set myself apart, I think that's kind of a hard question. I don't know that I did anything consciously to set myself apart as a candidate. But what I always tried to do, and I think was helpful, was to identify those things that were deal breakers for me, that I knew that it would make it difficult for me to thrive and be a useful member of someone's firm, and not try and put myself in a situation where I was a square peg in that round hole. I tried to find opportunities that I felt, where I would be happy and they would be happy with me.
Wow, yeah, that's definitely great advice, because I feel like I know that I heard this during law school as well, and I know a lot of law students are probably hearing the same thing, where you're told to have as broad of an appeal as possible, and not try to narrow yourself into a technology. For instance, I tried to narrow myself, and I went against that advice. I tried to narrow myself into a technology or IP entertainment focus. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's definitely something that most law students don't hear, is that it's okay to pigeonhole yourself if that's an area that you really want to be in. And a lot of law students are hearing the opposite, where you need to be as broad as possible. Whoever you're talking to, kind of tailor your message towards whatever firm they operate in. And so right. Would you give any advice to students that might not necessarily have the flexibility or the freedom to choose, and might just have to take whatever opportunity is available? And I know, just to give you like a guiding point, I know some people have said, like, and I heard this as well, to develop a practice on the side of something that, like, get with a smaller firm or do a firm practice that you're not really that passionate about, but then maybe develop that on your own within a firm or on the side as you can. Do you have anything along those lines, or any other advice that you would give them?
Had to bring in my associate here into the discussion. This is my doggy Carmel. And this is one of the things that you should bear in mind if you're thinking about practicing law out of your home, that your home oftentimes can intrude into the business pursuits that you might be engaged in. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But to answer your question, as far as people trying to make themselves into the mold of what their employers want, there's a real fine balance to be struck there. On the one hand, you have to be flexible and willing to keep an open mind and learn and work through the challenges of starting a new job, which is always an uphill battle. But on the other hand, if you're trying to renovate your own personality and likes and dislikes and skills or lack thereof in such a radical way that it breaks you down, that it winds up, our profession is plagued by depression and substance abuse. And there's a reason. It's because it's incredibly hard work, incredibly demanding. And you have to pay for those salaries somehow, and you pay in blood, sweat, and tears. So you need to be comfortable with putting in the blood, sweat, and tears. You need to feel good about what you're doing, either because you're interested in it, or you believe in the client's cause, or there are any number of reasons why you might feel good about what you're doing. But feeling good about what you're doing, I think, has to be the touchstone. And if you don't, it's not going to work for you.
Excellent. Yeah, that's definitely true. Okay, so I've got about 2 more questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay. So why your own practice?
Why my own practice? Fundamentally, this is getting back to big firms and being true to yourself and having being comfortable with and feeling good about what you're doing. I can't really speak to small firms because I wasn't at a small firm, and not every firm is the same. When I finally was fortunate enough to start a family. But what I found was that having a son and having a big firm law practice did not mix. Despite the firm's policies that assisted with family leave and various other things, despite the fact that I went to work after the birth of my son part-time, just didn't work. That thing about, again, when you're working part-time, that means you're part-time in the office and a lot of time at home. And though I didn't have this little girl then, I had my son about her size needing that much attention all the time. And so I just, the whole equation did not work. So we tried to make it work and it didn't. And I'm sad to say that I think law firms in general, not the one I was working for in particular, but law firms in general, large and small, have a lot to do for men and women to make the family, being a parent and practicing law, play well together. It's a constant challenge. So again, that's one of those things where if being a parent is important to you, I think you have to put that priority first and figure out a way to make your law practice work with that. And the way that it worked the best for me was to work part-time and out of my house.
Wow, definitely. So last question. I ask you to put yourself in the shoes of a law student that's graduating today. If you were not back in the 90s, but back in 2017, graduating from law school, what advice would you give to yourself in that position?
If I were graduating law school today, and if I were a young person graduating law school today, I think it's really easy to get caught up in what law school convinces you your career path should be. They put mechanisms in place to put you in interviews at certain firms. And, this is sort of the process that you go through. And you wind up thinking, oh, if I just go through the process, then everything will be okay. I would just encourage people to question the process and know that they are sort of on a conveyor belt and think about where that conveyor belt drops off. And if that's where they want to be at the end of the day, there's no harm in giving things a try. I mean, I think not just in the legal profession, but in general in the US today, career paths look a lot different than they used to and take a lot more twists and turns than they used to. And to be aware of that and open to it and know that if something's working for you, great. If it's not, I think you have to be open to trying new things.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today and share some really, really awesome advice and insights and personal experiences about your law school journey and your legal journey after that.
Wonderful. It's so good to see you again, Franklin. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. And make sure that you subscribe for future episodes of Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job.